So what do you do when you don't like the sex you're having? I'm Heather Elizabeth of AuthenticSexualYou.com, and that's what I wanted to talk about this week and actually next week too. This is such a big topic that I'm going to devote it to 2 different videos so that people don't get overwhelmed and you can kind of like focus in on the specific things that are relevant to you. Maybe it'll all be relevant to you, maybe only one of them will, but either way, this week, next week, this is what we're talking about. Not having good sex is actually a pretty common thing. There's so much you have to learn about your partner when you're with them. You got to learn technique. You got to learn their anatomy. You got to learn their personal style. You got to learn their erotic imagination, their sex drive, their libido, their ebbs and flows, how all of that works. So it's no wonder that when we're with someone, it can be a little bit of a slow start. And we really have been a little screwed over in our society by these Hollywood media scripts, by like what we see on TV, this idea of like, an organic or magic connection, that when you're with someone that you're really meant to be with, the sex is magic and the sex just comes together and you kind of lock eyes across the room and like, boom, you're, tossing each other on the kitchen table because you can't wait to have sex and there are orgasms galore. That is a great movie. That's a great TV show plot. That's also not super real. And the problem with that not being super real is that it sets up this idea in our mind that if our sex isn't mind-blowing and if our sex isn't super easy off the bat, that we're in a poor relationship or a poor connection, or there's something wrong with, the relationship as a whole, when really it's this particular thing. So like I said, going to break this down into 2 things. First thing I want to talk about is you and what you bring to the table in this, because we are what we can control in all of our relationships. So when it comes to sex, how well can you communicate your desire to your partner? Do you know your body? Do you know your libido? Do you know your ebbs and flows, your hot zones, your cold zones? And if you don't, that is the absolute first step into getting the sex you want to be having with your partner. And I really encourage you to spend some time figuring that out. So some people like to set aside a date night for themselves and do a little mood lighting and then just spend some time actually physically exploring their body, throw on some music, have a glass of wine, or tea or coffee, like whatever makes you feel good and in your body, and then explore and see what works for you. Because if you don't know what works for you, you can't tell your partner. And your partner can do exploration too, but if your partner was good at that, you probably wouldn't be having this conversation in the first place. The second thing that really you can keep in control in this area and that you can focus on is how your erotic imagination works. So that when your partner asks you what kind of sex you like to have, you don't just know the physicality of it, but you know the emotional, the psychological component too. I'm talking about here specifically is, what's your fantasy life like? What's your erotic imagination like? For some people, it's just a matter of exercising their erotic imagination, and they haven't really had to do that before. So my favorite place for that, and kind of like getting ideas for the sex I want to be having and for what I find hot and what I don't find hot, is erotica. That's my favorite. There are online sites like literotica.com. I just happen to have a handy book right here. This is Dirty Dates by Rachel Kramer Bussell, and this is a collection of short stories all about BDSM and kink erotica. So short story novella erotica I think are fantastic because you get like 15, 20 different stories in a book. You're going to like some of them, you're not going to like some of them, but all of them are going to make you go, is this something I want? Is this something I don't like? And it gives you a really concrete way of talking to your partner about something you find hot. And if you don't have your own words around that, using someone else's can be really useful. The third thing I want to talk about is the idea of finding your sexual voice. If you can't talk about sex, you can't talk about sex, right? So giving yourself permission to communicate verbally about sex is really, really important when it comes to getting the kind of pleasurable sex you want in the moment. Even giving yourself permission to express pleasure in bed, whether that's moaning when you really like something, you're saying, oh yeah, that feels so good, or a little to the left, a little to the right, up, down, slower, harder, faster. Any of those little things that you can just kind of like call out or breathe out in the moment can be really helpful for giving your partner clues about how to be a better lover for you. And you don't have to bark it out like a drill sergeant unless that is your particular dynamic of how you two like to get down. just practice saying the words. And if you're not, if you're not familiar with saying them, practice in front of a mirror, practice when you do self-exploration. Take some time actually linking sex with words so that in the moment you feel a little more prepared to talk to your partner, to let them know, when they're doing a great job and really encourage them about the stuff you like, and also to how to give some, some just brief little directions about how to move things over, adjust things a little bit so it can be more pleasurable for you. So that's it. 3 things that you can do right now. Practice these over the next week. And next week we'll talk about actually addressing this stuff with your partner and how to kind of bring it up in a hopefully a not too ego bruising way. But we'll give you some strategies there. As always, share this video with anyone who you think could use it, like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you next week.